Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bottom Line Show. I am Mihran Kalaydjian. Today, we are talking about the priorities and future of Council District 11 with Council Member Traci Park. So let's get started and hear directly from our Council Member Park. Council Member Park, welcome to the Bottom Line Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
My first question is, as you enter this stage of your term, what accomplishments are you most proud of, and what do you see as unfinished business for your district?
That is a great question. Thank you for asking. When I took office at the end of 2022, homelessness was the top of mind issue across the West Side. You will remember that there were widespread, unregulated encampments in every neighborhood in Council District 11. My team and I immediately got to work doing encampment interventions, adding new resources and providers to our bench of outreach workers. And as a result of that dedicated effort, we have now housed hundreds of people that were previously living on the streets and sidewalks in Council District 11. And Venice Beach is a perfect example of the comeback story that I'm trying to write for the West Side and all of Los Angeles. Before I took office, Venice had been rated the most dangerous beach in America. It had been in the headlines for all of the wrong reasons. And because of the hard work that we've put in as a council office to restore safety and access to our city's most iconic number one tourist destination, we are now home to the 2026 reboot of the TV show Baywatch. We were also just selected to host a major World Cup activation this summer. And when I took office, Venice was not part of the Olympics plan, but we are now set to host major competition events as well as major production events around the Olympics. And so that is a piece of work that I am really excited about, that I fought really hard to make happen, and that I want to see through. Also, last year, after the worst disaster in history in Los Angeles ripped through the Pacific Palisades, as we turn from what was the largest disaster response and debris removal effort in our city's history and turn to what will be the largest construction effort in our city's history, that is work that I feel very responsible to see through and to keep fighting to make sure every victim has a pathway to go home.
Thank you for that, Council Member. The other topic, the second topic, is about public safety because public safety remains a top concern across Los Angeles. How do you assess the city's current preparedness for emergencies such as fires, earthquakes, and other large-scale disasters, particularly on the West Side?
Well, we all saw with our own eyes on
Mhm.
January 7th how unprepared and under-resourced our public safety partners are here in the city of Los Angeles. And while I am very glad that the fire department has already taken major efforts to address policy and staffing changes that will help mitigate against the impacts of these kinds of disasters in the future, my assessment remains that we are not prepared. We have a fire department that is half the size that it should be for the city the size of Los Angeles. We have not added new firefighters or fire stations in LA since the 1960s. And we all saw with our own eyes on January 7th last year what decades of underinvestment in high functioning infrastructure and public safety looks like. And with major world events looming and the potential for other large scale disasters, it is beyond time that Los Angeles take this issue seriously. That's why I am personally proud to stand with our firefighters and our paramedics in supporting a ballot measure for November of this year that will finally allow us to make the investments that we need to scale up public safety and emergency preparedness in our city.
My councilwoman, in the first 24 to 72 hours after a major disaster like the fires, what should residents realistically expect from the city, and where are the biggest gaps today, and how did it affect you?
I personally was going into people's homes, looking for cats, bringing them in my own carriers and depositing them at hotels where people were staying. We partnered up with nonprofits who had experience in locating and recovering animals. But that was a real tragedy and a trauma in and of itself. I think it is very, very important for folks to realize that in a major emergency, there could be weeks of displacement, and that means being prepared to take your valuables, your necessary medication, and documents with you. We also saw the major stress that this placed on our utilities as well as our infrastructure. And those remain some of the biggest concerns. And while in the Palisades case, we were able to restore power and water within just a number of weeks, those are very long stretches of time for people to have to manage through. And while I think there are some things that the city and other government agencies did well and did timely in the aftermath of the disaster, the reality is there's never going to be enough help for everyone who needs it under those circumstances. And one of the things I am most proud of looking back is the way this community stepped up for each other, the way neighbors helped neighbors, and the way all of Los Angeles showed up to help protect and care for people who had been displaced.
So the homelessness still remains a mystery in the city of Los Angeles. The city continues to spend billions on homelessness. Beyond funding levels, what specific reforms or accountability measures are needed to ensure taxpayers see measurable on-the-ground results?
That's a great question. And, I think you've identified a major problem and a source of mistrust amongst residents and local government. Billions of dollars have been spent year after year, doubling down on programs and services and housing strategies that have not solved the problem or provided the results that taxpayers are paying for. One of the things that we are missing from the present toolkit is a binary choice between accepting help when it's offered and consequences. And I think there's a lot of room for debate there about what consequences ought to be. Nobody's going to tell you with a straight face that people should go to jail just because they have addiction issues or just because they have mental health issues. But the consequences very well may need to be court mandated and supervised rehab. And until we make the investment that we need in long-term residential care facilities and sober recovery-based housing, we're not going to solve this problem. Here on the West Side, I will share with you anecdotally, we have been so successful and so strategic with our encampment interventions that frankly, the folks who wanted help, who were sane enough, who were sober enough to accept it when it was offered, we got them. But frankly, we are down now to a very high acuity population on the streets. And you probably see what I see. When I look around at some of these folks, I don't think I need a motel room. I think I need a hospital and a doctor and a requirement for this person to go get the actual care that they need. So those are some missing policy components that we have to change if we're going to solve homelessness in LA and beyond.
About metrics, what metrics should residents use to judge whether homelessness policies are actually working in their neighborhoods?
Well, I think one of the best ways that residents can assess whether things are working is to look around in their own neighborhoods. Have things gotten better? Is the city being more responsive? Are encampments being timely addressed and serviced? And at the end of the day, when you look around on the West Side, the answer to that question is yes. There are far fewer encampments today than there were 3 years ago. Our bigger problem now is the RVs on our streets. And that has been a harder problem to solve for any number of reasons. But I think, the number of encampments is an important measure of the success, but we also need to be looking at the back end results. Where did those individuals go? Did they accept services and become stabilized? And have they been successfully placed on a pathway to recovery, independence, and stable housing? And so, as we are beginning to change things here in the city of Los Angeles, those kinds of metrics are exactly what I'm baking into our policies.
So, budget is a very big issue. The budget cut by the mayor. Los Angeles faces persistent budget shortfalls and structural deficits. What principles guide your budget priorities, and where do you believe the city must make difficult but necessary trade-offs?
My guiding principle is simple: fund core city services first. That's public safety, infrastructure, sanitation, and emergency preparedness. Those are foundational for our city. And when resources are limited, we have to prioritize what keeps people safe and what keeps communities functioning. Here in the city of Los Angeles, we are down rabbit holes of spending on programs and services and things that have not yielded results. No one can account for where the money has gone, and we are going to have to make some trade-offs. We keep wanting to add more and more on top of what we already have, but we are not adequately investing in maintaining the infrastructure and services that we do have. And so unless and until we right size our budget around those core fundamentals, the city is not going to improve, and we are not going to be camera ready when the world arrives this summer for the World Cup and in 2028 for the Olympics.
Yeah. So many residents feel they are paying more but receiving less from city government. How do you respond to that frustration?
Now, that frustration is real, and people are right to feel that way. They see rising fees and taxes, and yet the potholes remain, the response times are slow, our parks and infrastructure feel neglected. So the answer here is restoring discipline to how we spend. We need to be able to provide results and show people how their tax dollars are working. So you can spend money with good intentions, but there has to be accountability on the back end. And so, the city is more and more frequently passing off costs and increases to the local community. And if that is what the strategy is going to be, to try to right size the city budget, then taxpayers are absolutely right to demand that they get what they're paying for. And we have not seen that alignment in decades in LA.
So infrastructure and basic services, streets, sidewalks, sanitation, and public facilities are frequent complaints. What improvement should residents expect to see in the near term?
Well, one of the things that I am focused on is really utilizing world events as leverage to make investment in our public amenities. So, for example, here in Venice, we're going to be hosting marathon and triathlon and street cycling. And that means our roads are now competition venues, and our sidewalks will functionally serve as the fan bleacher zone that as they're cheering the athletes on. And so we are going to be making major infrastructure upgrades and improvements around the Olympics. I am focusing on mobility and accessibility across our coastal communities. But the reality is, so much of the challenges are going to remain because of the irresponsible spending inside the city budget. And one of the things that I hope that the Charter Commission Reform Commission will take up and that voters will be interested in is having a multi-year budget. Trying to do this on an annual cycle means that there is not continuity and see-through on projects between budget cycles. There's no elbow room to weather lean times. And that is a strategy that needs to change. We holistically, as a city, need but don't currently have a long-term capital spending program that prioritizes repair and maintenance of our basic infrastructure.
Wow. The trust in City Hall has been shaken by ethics scandal and public skepticism. Beyond new rules, what reforms are needed to restore transparency, accountability, and public confidence?
It's a really good question. And, I took office at the end of 2022 at a time when I think public confidence in local government may have been at its lowest. And through my council office, I have tried to lead with transparency. My door is always open to the community. I am in every neighborhood and community council meeting, HOA, bid meeting, Chamber of Commerce meeting, neighborhood get-togethers. And we are trying to be as responsive as we can and to develop policy that actually meets the needs of everyday residents here in the city of Los Angeles. But we also need to be proactive, not reactive. We need to report clear, measurable outcomes, public-facing data that tracks our progress, whether that is how many permits have been issued in the Pacific Palisades, or whether it is how many people living on the streets have been housed, or how many available shelter beds we have on any given night in the city of Los Angeles. So there is a component to investing in data collection and reporting, but there is also something really important about the accountability that comes from leading based on collaboration and truly serving as an advocate and a representative inside City Hall for the basic things that residents are asking for.
Wow. How do neighborhood councils and community stakeholders fit in your decision-making process, and how can their role be meaningfully strengthened?
So I have always been a huge supporter of our neighborhood council system. That is an important element of our local democracy. Our neighborhood and community councils are comprised of volunteers who are subject matter experts in their own neighborhoods and communities. Pursuant to the city charter, they're there to serve in an advisory capacity to the council office. So my approach to my neighborhood councils is to lean in heavily, to engage with them. Their agenda is my agenda. They are there asking on behalf of the neighbors in their communities for the things that they need and want to see out of the city. I don't know what the point of having them is when you have a council member that doesn't want to engage and collaborate. One of the things that I was most frustrated about with last year's budget cuts when I voted no on the budget was that of all the things citywide that we were going to go after, of all of the positions that we were looking to cut, taking money away from local neighborhood volunteers who are there serving to help make our city better just seemed like a really unfair and nearly mean-spirited way of allocating our city's funds. So I'm a huge believer in them, and I couldn't be more grateful to the men and women who serve in that role on the West Side.
Thank you. So, what has surprised you most about serving on the city council compared to your expectations before taking office?
Oh, where do we even start? So you may know this, but I was a private citizen living my life, minding my business, trying to exist in this crazy broken city just like everyone else when I ran for office. In fact, I had never stepped foot inside LA City Hall until the day I took office and was sworn in. And so I don't even know that I knew what to expect. I could tell as a resident and as a lawyer who worked with other cities in California that what was happening in Los Angeles was neither normal nor acceptable. But I didn't have any real experience in the city of Los Angeles political system. And so everything has been an enormous learning curve. I could tell it was broken, but it was not until I got an up close look at it that I was confirmed on exactly how bad and how broken it was. The pace at which things move in the city of Los Angeles is a huge challenge. The sheer size of trying to govern 580 square miles across 15 council districts with incredibly diverse, unique cities in and of itself is an incredible challenge. But one of the things that I have seen now is that local leadership absolutely makes a difference and matters in terms of what your everyday quality of life looks and feels like in the city of LA.
So looking ahead, what does success look like for your district and for Los Angeles as a whole over the next few years?
Well, we know we have some continued major financial challenges and
Mhm.
uncertainty with all of the economic red flags that we see, but we also have unprecedented opportunity in front of us with major world events on the horizon.
Mhm.
For me personally, as we continue to move forward the Pacific Palisades recovery, ensuring that every victim has a pathway home, that our mobile homes and our condos and our townhouses and our renters and our small business owners are not left behind is an obligation and a sense of responsibility that remains very heavy on me. I am heartened by the progress that we see every day, and the determination of this community to rebuild and come home is remarkable. I also am seeing economic development opportunities happening all over the city of Los Angeles. When I took office, businesses were still shuttered because of the lingering effects of the pandemic. We have been cutting ribbons on new businesses opening all over the West Side for the last couple of years. And as I've mentioned, with world events, especially the Olympics right on the horizon, we are doing everything within our power to make the investments in our public spaces and community programming and infrastructure that we need so that we will shine on the world stage in 2028.
Councilmember Park, thank you first for sharing your insights, your and priorities for Council District 11 and the future of Los Angeles. I'm Mihran Kalaydjian, reminding all our readers that civic engagement begins with awareness, and together we can get to the bottom line of what matters most for our city. Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.
Bye bye.